Hi everyone, we're getting started. This lecture today is about deployment. This is a super like crucial part of your project. I'm gonna try to go as slowly as possible, and we're gonna try to get through all this content. It's less than the technical side, I think, but it's definitely a really important component with like finishing your projects. And so let's say you finish making your entire application. Like now what? How do you get it to appear like on the web, basically? How do you get to move off of your local machine onto like an actual website? This is the process of deployment. So what is actually just deployment? And basically, if you from like the previous like couple lectures, right, you've learned about like your you learn about like the different components of your application, right? You learn about the front end and the back end. And what this really entails is just getting somebody else to run your server.js, so you don't have to run on your own machine, right? So far, like every single time we've been like trying to like open up like Capbook or like another application, you've been doing npm start on your machine, and what this is doing is basically just getting is running your server.js file on your machine and just leaving it there so that it can take in different requests from the front end. And honestly, you could also do this for like an actual application as well. But like something might happen, like your machine might go down, or like there might be some outages, and you don't want to deal with that on your end, right? You want to get to something like a hosting service or something else to help like ensure that your site stays online, and that the server.js keep running and delivering these requests. Yeah, and the whole idea of deployment is that you want to make your web app accessible to the entire world. So yeah, now if anyone wants to access your site, right, once it's deployed, they can just visit the URL, and this will open up the client on their end. Instead of like going to like localhost 3000, like go to like your site.heroku.com, anything like that. Yeah. And today what we're going to do is we're going to try deploying. I'm just going to demo it on my computer. You can follow along if you'd like. You don't have to, I think, because it's a bit involved. And there's a couple different links, but they're all attached in the slide. So if you'd like to like try deploying your own application, or if you want to try deploying Capbook, you can if you want to. But I'm just going to try and start with a couple examples. So first, we're going to use Heroku to deploy. It's a really great service because it's free with this asterisk. And your app will basically end up being deployed at this URL, which is yourapp.game.herokuapp.com. And then the one we use for this year is if you go to like weblab.is/example, you'll see that like we deployed Capbook 2023 at Heroku using Heroku as well. And you might need a credit card number, but we'll get to this in a little bit. Okay. Kenneth actually made a really great like document to go along with this, which is weblab.is/homework3. And you can follow along with the instructions there as well if you'd like to work on this for your own project. Anything like that. What I'm gonna do first here is I'm gonna actually run through a bit of setup, because there's a bit of a setup required for actually being able to use Heroku in the first place. And so first what you have to do is you have to verify your student status on GitHub. So you need to be able to get GitHub student, and this student status is what Heroku uses to later like provide you with resources. So I'm not gonna actually show off how to do this because I've already done it, but I did this last night at like 2 a.m. and it took me like maybe 5 minutes in total. So I think it's not a huge deal if you're reading it now. From there, if you haven't done it already, you should go to heroku.com and click on sign up to create a new account. There's some information to fill out. You can do like multi-factor authentication if you need to. And this is the part where you might need to connect some billing information. So due to some changes in how Heroku works, students now can only get 1 year of Heroku for free. So after WebLab is over, after a year, we'll send out a reminder for you to like disable your website if you don't want to be charged after a year. We are sorry about this, but I think it's just how it is now, unfortunately. And also, if you don't have your own billing info, we can make some accommodations for that. So we could have a private Piazza post and we'll try to cover for you. Okay. You don't need to pay anything. I just want a disclaimer. No money needs to go to Heroku. Yeah, but you do need to provide like a credit card or like some billing information in order to use the service in the first place. Okay, so this is what it'll end up looking like. So you have to go verify with GitHub. You get like on the Heroku site first, in order to be able to do this. If you run into this error, make sure that you actually go into to GitHub student and you actually get like this these benefits already. This authorization can take maybe like I said, like a couple minutes at most. They say it's like up to a day, but like it's really fast. As long as you give them like something valid. And once you've done all this whole process of like verifying your GitHub student, getting billing information, and then applying, you should get like something like this message that lets you get these platform credits. And then you can actually finally get started using Heroku. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a visual walkthrough of this deployment. So I'm going to go into, let's do this. I'm going to go into Heroku. So this is the web lab staff Heroku. And I'm going to create a new app. I'm just going to call it Capbook Dummy. And I'm just following along with the slides, to be honest. So yeah, you can also follow along there if you'd like as well. And I'm just going to create a new app. And to do this, I'm going to connect to GitHub. And I'm going to do the web app workshops repository. So I'm moving pretty quickly, but all the steps are on the slides if you want to follow along. And also, you don't have to follow along here. This is mostly just for a future reference in case you want to watch this video back later as well. Okay. I'm going to go scroll down to manual deploy, and I'm going to enter the name of the branch main to deploy it, and then deploy branch. Okay. And then it's going to show a bunch of stuff going on. And I'm going to talk through, we're just going to chill for a little bit while it does that. But yeah, as a reminder, right, you don't have to do this for yourself, but if you want, you can try deploying the skeleton code, which we have set up for you, or we can try deploying like Capbook. Either one of these is fine, and just follow along with the instructions on the slides. Okay, let's see if Heroku's done. Maybe? Hello? There you go. Okay, so it actually will take another like 3 or 4 minutes apparently for the server to actually show me this page. But does anyone want to take a wild guess if this actually works? Raise your hand if you think that this worked first try with no issues. Okay, I feel like you're not being fully honest with me, but yes, this is not going to actually work, unfortunately. It's super sad. And I'm not going to sit around and wait for this to load, but we can actually go if we so we can view obviously like the actual site. It will load, but it'll give an error in a little bit. But if we actually go to what's it called? If we actually go to the log, which you can see, if you go to like this upper right hand corner and click on more, you can actually go and view the logs. And so if you remember, like in your terminal, right, this is like kind of analogous to looking at like the command line, seeing if there's any errors there. You can look at like the Heroku error logs and see if there's any issues. And you can see that there is something here. It says web process failed to bind to port within 60 seconds of launch. And this is because we run the server on port 3000, right? But Heroku actually doesn't like let you hard code this. They pick a port for you, so you actually can't hard code this. And right now in our Capbook React application, this is hard coded. Let me show you actually where it is. So I'm gonna check out in real quick. And if we go into server.js, we can actually see what's happening here. So right now, port is hard coded to 3000, and this determines exactly where the port is, where the this actually is determining exactly where the which port that we use to deploy the server on. Okay. So how do we go about fixing this? Let's go back to the slides real quick. Yeah, so you don't have to actually look at the syntax yet, but basically, yeah, like I said, Heroku dynamically assigns your app a port, so you can't really set it to a fixed number. It adds it to this thing called the EN or the environment, which I will talk about in a little bit. You don't know what this is just yet, but you'll need to like switch your listen to this expression instead. No need to worry about this for now. I'm going to talk through what exactly. So it gets it. So Heroku actually gets the port from this file called process from this location called this file called process.env or env or environment. And what this is that to understand this, let's go through a quick demonstration. So far in this class, we've been talking about the relationship between the front end and the back end, right? Front end is where like all your React lives, right? It's where all like your components are, whereas the back end consists of the server, and the server is defined like, right, has like these individual components of your database and like your application for login and that kind of thing. But it also has this environment file called process.env. This contains information about like the machine that the server is running on, usually like all stuff about the OS, as well as any private like information you might want to store on the server only. And so basically it serves as a kind of like global variable for our backend files to access, and just our backend. So the front end cannot see any of this information. And we're going to use this file to determine which port to run on, because we only really need the backend to access this information. We can also use this to hide sensitive info like secret keys and passcodes that we might not want the front end to access, because the front end is like the client, right, which is publicly available. If anyone goes to your website, they can see the front end, they can see the client. Okay, so if we go actually into, I'm going to show another bad example, but if we go to server.js, right, you can see like our like Mongo connection URL is like very plainly in sight, which is not great. This means that if we have this like publicly available, anyone can just go in and like modify our database without our permission, because we just publicly like put this connection URL in here when we push to GitHub and that kind of stuff. And this is bad. So we want to move this into a separate file, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So what we're going to do is add a file called .env to our project's outermost folder. And I've already set this up here. And we also want to add .env to our project's .gitignore file. And I'm going to show that file as well. So .gitignore is a special file. And what it does is it basically keeps track of all the files that GitHub completely ignores when you add and commit. So any changes to the .env file will not be tracked. And this is really good because you don't want to commit like, the problem before was that we were like putting our like Mongo connection URL in our server.js file, and we were then like pushing it to GitHub and having it be publicly available. If we also pushed .env, like we would be creating the exact same issue as before, right? Because the problem is that it's public. And this, but the problem is that because it's ignored by GitHub, you have to create this file for every single one of your team members. So later on when you're working on your project, you have to make sure to create this file for every single one of your team members. Make sure they all have all the secrets or whatever that they need, and also make sure that you each add .env to your project's gitignore file. This is super important. Okay. And like I said, like you can just type in like .env like on the bottom line of the gitignore file, like so. Okay. Next up, you can add like relevant secrets to the .env file. And in this case, I put in the Atlas SRV and as well as the session secret that we used for Google Authentication. And yeah, like I mentioned, everyone has to make their own file, no exceptions. If you want to access your server, and you want to do it securely, got to do this. This is the necessary part of it. The next step is to install this package. You can do so with npm install.m. And this will allow you to use the actual file. And to use this package in your server.js, you add this line which imports it in. And then wherever you want to use the variable from this from this file, you can use process.env.var_name where needed. So I'm going to check out to another branch and just show this off real quick. So now I go to server.js, I added this line. And instead of using, so you see how I use process.env.mongo URL instead. And I also use, where is this? Like process.env.session secret instead. So I've changed these two parameters. Instead of being like these hard-coded strings, they are set up such that they are like variables. So if someone were to see this code, they wouldn't be able to get our session secret because it's just like the name of the variable and not the actual like value, right? That's the important part here. Okay, and yeah, here's what it will look like. So instead of doing this, we just add these into our process.env file, and then we just change these two lines to hide them away. Okay. And like I mentioned, we're also going to use this file to store the port. And since this file's on our machine, so instead of having the port be hard-coded to 3000, what this would do is that port will actually be drawn from this file. Oh, that was bad. And this will prevent it from running into the issues that Heroku ran into before. Okay, so after we do these changes, make sure to make when you do this locally, try to make sure to git add, commit, and then push. And then now we can try and redeploy. And second time around, so you can actually follow along if you want to in Capture React by using these commands. But will this work? So kind of spoil it a little bit, but you can try and see if this will work. So this is the initial run. It did not actually work, but now that we have this .env file, does anyone want to take a guess to see if it will work? So how many people think it will work? Raise your hand. So not a lot of people are super enthusiastic. Why might this not work? Any guesses? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, exactly. So the .env file is like, it's not tracked by GitHub, right? So it's only on our machine. So like Heroku doesn't know anything about it. Like we didn't tell it to do anything. And we can't exactly go into Heroku's like server and like modify the .env file on their end because we don't have access to that. But we do have access to something else, which is what's called config variables. And this is basically the equivalent of the .env file on the server side. So on the Heroku side. So yeah, like I mentioned, Heroku doesn't actually have access to our .env files. And to fix this, we can set Heroku config variables. This is the Heroku version of this file. And we can do this if we go into Heroku and we go into settings. So there's a button that says reveal config variables. We click on this, and then we can add in the values from our .env file like so. So I'm just gonna copy these over. And important to note here is that we don't use quotes. So that's in one of them. Then I'm adding the section secrets. Okay. And so once I add these in, I'm going to redeploy. And I'm going to use the deploy branch because this is where my changes were made. And yeah, so this is how you go about adding, right? This is a picture we just did. This is how you go about adding config variables. So you can add your Atlas, SRV, and your session secret here. Instead of putting in, and also in addition to putting them in the .env file, you should also put them here. Yeah. So yeah, just to recap, right? .env is a local file, right, which we use to keep sensitive information private, whereas config variables are a Heroku feature that we use for a similar reason. So these are analogous, but they're different. But we have to use both of them basically. Okay, let's try deploying again. And let's see, it was successfully deployed. Let's open it up. Let's see if it works. So, yay, it works, right? Right? How many people think it actually works, like completely? There's like a couple hands. I'm so happy that you guys are so innocent and happy. But no, it did not fully work. And this is because if you go to login, oh wait, it's not supposed to work. That's so crazy. 1 second. Oh, let me save this real quick. Okay, my bad. Yeah, just kidding. It actually didn't work. That's so crazy. My bad, guys. I was doing this last night, and I did not remember to change it back. But anyways, so if you remember, the reason this doesn't fully work. So actually, like the deploy worked fine. Like everything here is working great. Like if you go, like you can see, like everything is working as intended except for login. And this is because, like, if you remember, when we set up like our Google authentication, I can't believe that has happened. That's so crazy. When we set up our Google authentication, like it doesn't actually like let us log in here because we only whitelisted localhost 5000 and not actually like this website link, because we're not using localhost 5000 anymore, right? We're using like the link here is capbookdummy.heroku.com. So we have to whitelist this link as well. And the way you go about doing this, I'm going to show the slide, is you go to console.developers.google.com. I'm not going to show this off because I think I'm not allowed to, but if you go into this console, go to credentials, and then you go to, and then you click on your OAuth client IDs and you modify those. You can add a URL whitelist. So I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do this now by copying this link in. So I'm going to click on modify this, and I'm going to add this URI. And I'm going to save it, which I forgot to do. Make sure you save. And now if I go to login, it works. Cool. Okay. So those are like the main things that you should try to fix before you actually deploy your site. And success, hopefully. So I'm going to try logging in. Actually, I'm not like 100% sure this will work, to be honest, because of the nature of this. So it might still not work. Let me read it. I might have to read it. So actually, the third deploy was actually like people raise their hands. The third deploy was actually like perfectly fine because we don't have to actually redeploy this. All we have to do is just change the authorization in the Google console. And like the original deployment was like perfectly valid. It was actually like a success. So whoever has raised their hand, good job. You're actually right. But yeah, so this is hopefully a success, but things might also not work out. So, but let's go through the whole process again, because there's a lot to cover and every single step here is really important. So the first thing you have to do is link your app to Heroku through GitHub. Second thing to do is create this .env file and add it to your git ignore. And we went over what these two things do. .env is like kind of like a global variable for your contains a bunch of global variables for your server. And .git ignore is a file that specifies which paths and which files to ignore when adding and committing to GitHub, right? .env contains stuff that GitHub really should not know about because GitHub is public and .env is private. And then we changed our port from 3000 to process.env.port or 3000. So this lets Heroku dynamically allocate the port instead of hard coding it. And we move some more sensitive data into this file, like our Atlas SRV and our session secret that we use for Google authentication. And we can access them in the backend code with this syntax process.env. Whatever variable name that we care about. Make sure that Heroku knows about our .env variables by using config variables in settings and put them in. We don't use quotes for strings. Don't put those in. And then we told Google authentication to allow logins from our new website address instead of just doing localhost 5000. Okay, that's the whole process. And then after you do all this, you can click deploy. And honestly, it might still break because sometimes it's just like that, and it's broken right now. So thank you so much. And good luck. Please come ask staff for help.